Well, good evening. You're just in time for the town hall session. This evening, we are speaking about rights and choices, especially of the girl child. This is coming in the wake of the International Conference on Population Development, ICPD. That's a conference that's taking place from the 12th to the 14th of November, but it has not come without controversy. Quick facts. Reports indicate that 214 million women struggle with pregnancy prevention. Another 39,000 girls are forced into marriages every year. It gets even worse. 4 million girls are subjected to female genital mutilation. So the conference says those are the things it's going to talk about. But there's a bit of opposition as well. We'll find out why. Keep the conversation going. Use the hashtag Monday Report at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. I'll sample some of your views during this broadcast. But without any further ado, let me start by introducing my guest, beginning from my farthest right, Mr. Charles Kanjama. Thank you so much for making time. He's an advocate. Asante for coming. Angela Nguku is Executive Director, White Ribbon Alliance. Asante for coming. Dr. Josephine Kibaru-Mbae. She's the Director General, National Council Population and Development, and also the co-chair, International Programs Committee, Nairobi Summit, ICPD. So she will be answering all those concerns and questions from the audience as well. Followed by Dr. Wahome Ngare, who's also a gynecologist. Asante sana for making time. And Dr. Elizabeth Gitau, CEO, Kenya Medical Association. I have a panel of doctors. So they're all experts when it comes to this conversation. And we also have some very well-informed people in the audience. They will be running this agenda. But without any further ado, let's start this conversation and keep hashtag Monday Report. I'd like to sample some of your views as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. And Dr. Mbae, I'll start with you. What is this conference meant to achieve and why now?
25 years ago in 1994, the world met in Cairo. 179 member states signed off against what is known as the ICPD Program of Action. It's in 1994 when actually population was seen more of a people-centered initiative rather than numbers. And the issue then was putting people, especially women and girls, at the center of development. That was in 1994. And countries following signing this program of action went on to develop policies and programs on how to implement that, that program of action nationally. In Kenya, for instance, we developed several policies. We have the population policy for national development, other policies in health, in gender, in youth, and so forth. So all those were in response to that program of action.
So when you say putting women at the center of development, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, it means that the world recognized the role of women and girls in terms of development. Because previously when you talk about population, it was more like, dealing with numbers, statistics, and so forth. But there was a recognition that unless the women and girls are empowered through different approaches, education, provision of reproductive health services, and so forth, then the world was not getting anywhere because we were losing half of the population in terms of their involvement in development. So 2019 now is 25 years since Cairo, and as the world, we are now taking stock of where we are 25 years down the line in terms of those issues, those things in the program of action which we agreed as the world to do, so as to make sure that it's a different kind of environment, especially for women and girls, in terms of their health, in terms of empowerment, in terms of reducing all these other things which make women not participate fully in development.
Okay, let me bring in Ann Kioko. She's with Citizen Go, Director Africa, and she's opposed to this conference. Let's find out why. And what is your concern?
Thank you so much, Trevor. And like you have rightfully said, I work with Citizengo, and we run online petitions to defend life, family, and religious freedom across Africa. And right now, as we are seated here, we have a running petition asking the President of Kenya not to support ICPD 25 agenda.
Why?
First, I have a concern on the registration. I am a woman who believes in the rights of everybody, including the preborn children, and that means I'm opposed to abortion. I am pro-life, I am pro-family. I applied to be registered for this conference a week after it was launched for registration. I have not received registration, and so are so many other pro-life and pro-family people that I know that have not been registered.
So you think you haven't received the registration because you're pro-life?
And pro-family, yeah. Exactly.
And that's the reason you want this conference to be stopped.
Number two,
and it hasn't even started yet.
Number two, the agenda of this conference. Looking into the program, looking into the agenda, you should raise concern. I looked at the program, and first I saw a very concerning event by China. They are coming to be giving us their expertise on how they have been able to control their population, two-child policy through abortion, and this will be discussed in this conference. Number two, the agenda of this conference is all about sexual, reproductive, and health rights. And this, with an expert look at the UN, this is abortion and abortion and abortion. So there's a very clear agenda of pushing abortion as a human right in this conference. Number two, there's the comprehensive sexuality education, and there's a side event on this. Comprehensive sexuality education is about sexualization of children, and this will be discussed in this conference.
Okay.
Number three, contraception of children. They're saying that our girls need to know how to contracept, and this is also being discussed in this conference. And number four, LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights is an agenda that is very clear for this conference. And that's why we have this running petition signed right now by 36,000 people who are asking the president and actually everybody, the delegates that are coming down to this conference, not to sign the 12-point commitments that are being made in this conference.
Okay. Angela, is that true? You've had the concerns. You know the 12-point agenda. Does any of those things she says feature there?
Well, interesting. I disagree to a large extent, because as a defender of human rights, and especially maternal health rights, I believe one of the key things that ICPD is coming to talk about is about zero maternal mortality. Because as we are speaking now, I know it's something that you did not come up with when you are tabling the ICPD agenda. We are losing over 8,000 women in Kenya today because of maternal deaths. And we know why women are dying in pregnancy and childbirth. Quality of care is an issue. We are losing over 13,000 girls dropping out of school because of teenage pregnancy. And most of them are going to, we cannot help them because they are falling pregnant. We are not educating. They don't have even life skills on what exactly are we supposed to do. In addition, they are not empowered enough to know what is it that exists for me. Number three, we are talking about zero unmet need for family planning. There are many women who want to delay pregnancy or spare their children, but they can't because they cannot access modern contraceptives. We are talking about sexual and gender-based violence. We are still talking about, we have had it on TV everywhere. We have seen homicide, gendercide. Women are being killed, men are being killed. We are talking about gender-based violence. In this country, the Constitution of Kenya is very clear. Abortion is not legal in Kenya, so we cannot even start talking about abortion in Kenya because it's illegal. Number two, we know the human rights, including reproductive rights, and the Constitution is very clear. And we are not talking about, there are things which, I think a lot of times what I've heard in these countries that we talk from a misinformed perspective, and so we take it and run with it without really coming to interrogate. I've interrogated the agenda of ICPD a lot of times. I will talk about the registration because I have tried to register actually 3 times, and I think it's a thing that we raised with Dr. Kibaru, because registration has been an issue to many people, including my own people, my own staff, that you try to register, but there's been issues around that, and every time we ask, they tell us that we are going to work on it. Okay. So for me, Trevor, from my point of view, I'm an advocate of women and girls, mothers not dying in pregnancy and childbirth.
Yeah.
I cannot stand seeing so many women. And if I dropped out of school because of teenage pregnancy today, I would not be who I am today. And many of us who are here. So I think first, before we can talk about anything, let's look at about the Constitution of Kenya. What does it say? Mm-hmm. Number two, what is the ICPD agenda all about? Because a lot of times I have seen so many things going on social media, and I've seen that in our country. I think we are a country which centralizes things even before we understand what they are. Okay. So for every common and normal Kenyan, the first thing I would ask is, can we first understand what this discussion is all about before we can actually go to even say we are pro or against it?
Okay.
Thank you.
So out of the list of 4 that she's given, you disagree with all of them. I want to bring in Dr. Gitau on this. It's very deliberate. I'm starting with the women because this is their agenda. I'll come to the men later on. Where do you think this misconception comes from?
I think in this country, we have tended to sensationalize very, very important issues in the country. It is very clear, as Angela has mentioned, that there are 3 key things that are going to be addressed during the ICPD conference. And what we are dealing with is maternal deaths. Where are we having maternal deaths and yet there's free maternity? Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. Number 2, unmet needs for family planning. It means that we have unintended pregnancies which are happening due to either lack of information or lack of access to the family planning options, and even lack of information or data for governments to actually make decisions as to what their women need. And also in terms of sexual-based violence, part of the issues we are having because of unintended pregnancy and also unsafe abortions is the issue of sexual-based violence. So this conference is very clear. It is about accelerating the promise. And it is not just accelerating the promise by government, it is about accelerating the promise by every one of us. So I think this is a point where you ask yourself, since ICPD is here, what am I promising to do? When it comes to abortion issues, what am I promising to do to ensure that our girls get the correct information regarding their sexuality and also regarding sex itself?
Isn't that where the problem is?
That is not exactly where the problem is.
We're talking about abortion and the right information to the girls.
The controversy is coming because we think there is an ideology that is being addressed, or an ideology that is being pushed to Africans. However, that is not the spirit of the ICPD conference. The ICPD conference is about everybody coming together and ensuring that those 8,000 women do not die, ensuring that our girls stay in school, and ensuring that we promote development by developing the girl child.
Okay. Dr. Ngare, what are your concerns with this conference?
Thank you, Trevor. It is true that on looking at it from the onset, the 3 zeros we are supposed to meet is 0 unmet needs for family planning, 0 maternal deaths, and then 0 gender-based violence. But when you go to the commitments as they are written, the 12th of them, what you discover is that there is an intentional agenda to institutionalize and propagate the sexual and reproductive health and rights agenda. And it's important for Kenyans to understand that sexual and reproductive health and rights is actually a doctrine, is an ideology. The only reason it's not a religion is because it doesn't refer to a God. And WHO has defined what sexual health is, which is an integral part of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And that requires access to abortion. It requires legalization of same-sex marriages. It requires legalization of prostitution. It requires that we allow children between the age of 10 to 18 to access contraceptives without parental consent. It requires access to gender reassignment surgery. And very importantly, it says that comprehensive sexuality education is an integral part of sexual health. Now, comprehensive sexuality education is again not sexual education. It's a whole agenda on its own. It says that sex is for pleasure, and it is everybody's right to learn how to enjoy sex. And therefore, from the age of 4 to 5, we are to teach our children how to touch themselves in their private parts, to experience sexual pleasure. We are supposed to encourage them to have sex with each other at the age of 10 to decide their orientation, male, female, 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 male, male, to determine their orientation. We're also supposed to make sure they get contraceptives because they may get pregnant, and if they do, to provide abortion services. That is our problem, Trevor. These statements are loaded. They are not what they seem.
Yeah.
And just before we have any argument about it, one of the main themes, the first theme of the 5 themes, main themes of the 12 things says, achieve universal access to sexual and reproductive health as a part of universal health coverage. And if you go through these commitments, you find that term everywhere. The SGDs they're referring to, 3.7, is about sexual and reproductive health. It's all there. So the thing is, on the face value, what they present to us looks very good, and it's things we agree with. We would want those 3 zeros to be met. What they're giving us as how we are to meet these needs is a problem.
Okay. Dr. Mbae, I'll come to you to respond because I saw you listening to all of them. But Charles, in a country with laws, is that possible to slide in? Because here we already know things like homosexuality is illegal, abortion is illegal. How can that sneak in?
Trevor, that's a very good question. Kenya in 2010 underwent a transformation in our legal framework. And we passed a new constitution. And in that new constitution, we indicated what are the sources of law in Kenya. And in Article 2 of the Constitution, it's a very second article, paragraph 5 and 6, we did indicate that sources of law in Kenya include treaties, agreements, and conventions of international law, which you could call conventional international law, when international legal persons agree to a legal document and become bound by it. And also we said that a source of law in Kenya is customary international law. Customary international law means norms that are accepted widely by civilized countries. So there's always been a debate among international law scholars as to what are these norms, where can you find the content of these norms. And it is said that this includes even the writings of eminent scholars. So there's always been a debate between, you could almost say a clash of civilization, clash of cultures, a clash of ideologies, of philosophies between people who would like to populate the content of international law with their own views of how we should organize ourselves. What I can say is that in Kenyan courts, we very frequently mention the text of different international legal instruments, both in favor or in opposition to a particular argument, so that for Kenyans going forward, the process of treaty making is very significant to us, because the moment treaties are made, they can be quoted and cited and can be used by the judges as a source of law when interpreting disputes in Kenya. And just to conclude, Trevor, on this point, ICPD in 1994 was, for those of us who followed the conference very closely in Cairo, was a conference where there was a lot of controversy over a number of issues, like the question of abortion, between certain countries, including majority African countries and the Muslim countries, on one hand, and on the other hand, certain Western countries who thought that there should be an international right to abortion. But because treaty making is done by consensus, eventually there was an agreement that we should not include this controversial topic, because there are different countries have different treatment of this issue. So I think the concern of some of the critics or some of those who are concerned about the conference is this conference going to be a new battleground over the content of what is reproductive health? Is the ideology that has gained a footing in Western countries on sexual health and rights going to be canonized through this conference, or will the conference respect the culture and traditions of African countries and also the countries in the Arab world which have a view of family?
So the main opposition now is based on speculation. Because you're saying in Cairo in 1994, this conversation was had, but they left out the controversial bits. That doesn't mean you don't have the conversation. We have conversations around abortion all the time. We just don't approve it. Is it wrong to talk about it?
What I remember is they actually had very long night meetings as they were crafting the final text of the program for action.
Yeah.
I think the concern is that since 1994, for 25 years, there's been a lot of material that has been churned out about the meaning of certain terms and phrases, like comprehensive sexuality education, like sexual health, sexual rights, and that if those phrases are then captured in the text of the declaration of ICPD plus 25, then it would mean that they have come in as euphemisms. The idea is that a euphemism is a word which says something good but hides something bad behind it. Okay. So I think that's the debate that let's have
right Dr. Mbae respond to this. You've had the concerns. What is the true position?
I think it's very important for us to make it very clear that we are not opening the discussion of Cairo. The program of action is not being renegotiated. There's no discussion around what we already agreed in Cairo. Basically, what we are doing now, 25 years later, is to see whether we are keeping the promise of Cairo. So there will be no negotiated outcome from this summit. Actually, what is there is a Nairobi statement, which countries will use that document, should they so wish, to bring on the table their commitments on how they are keeping the Cairo promise. As Kenya, looking at the Nairobi statement, which was developed through consultation, we've come up with our own thoughts around what we think are the promises we've not kept. And the promises we've not kept are those things which my colleagues are talking about. Mothers are still dying in childbirth. Teenagers, like 2018, 430,000 of them between 10 and 19 got pregnant. And most of these are the ones who reported in health facilities. Many of them are delivered at home or had miscarriages or abortions and so forth. So the numbers are big, and we know we have not kept the promise, and we are leaving some people behind. So I want to make it very clear that we are not opening the program of action for any negotiation. It is us asking ourselves, where are we and what are we doing to keep the promise and make sure that we are not leaving anybody behind? And following up on Advocate Kanjama's statement, when treaties and such things are negotiated internationally, countries adapt or adopt that which fits within their cultural, socio-cultural situation. And issues of sexual and reproductive health in Kenya, I want to quote His Excellency the President in 2015 when he responded to President Obama. Some of the issues which are rights in other places are non-issue to us. Issues of gays, lesbians, and so forth are low or non-existent because they are not even in our constitution. They are not accepted by our constitution. When we talk of rights, we have bigger problems like women dying, like children dying, gender-based violence, young girls being married off to old men, and so they have no opportunities. So it is very important to know the context under which each country operates. And bringing the word to Nairobi does not mean now we are going to be spoon-fed by anybody else who has rights in a different perspective. Our policy documents won't be negotiated or discussed, and we discuss all the time when we are reviewing a policy with stakeholders. So we are not going to just say because we have had Cairo in Nairobi, now things are suddenly going to look different. Our president won't be committing on behalf of Kenyans those things which we feel are not going right. And if you look at, I think there are the 17 points for Kenya, which will be uploaded on the website very soon, is the same issues which Ajera and the doctor there discussed. We are losing women, we are losing children, women and girls are being married off, all those things which we know are a problem to us. So let us not assume that because the summit is in Nairobi, that we are going to be spoon-fed things which are not Kenyan. Issues of comprehensive sexuality education. I think I've been on the table and on discussion for a long time. And the Ministry of Education, during the revision of the curriculum, has not taken the comprehensive sexuality education as as came out from the UN.
Yeah.
We've had long discussions. As we speak now, we are still talking of sex education. And the content of that is what we are still discussing. So there's nobody who can come and tell us that we have taken sexuality education, comprehensive sexuality education, and adopted it, and we are teaching it in school, because that is not true.
All right.
Let me finish by talking about the registration.
Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 stages of registration. When somebody registered, and we have tried to ask ourselves, where is the problem?
Yeah.
There is the technical clearance. Whoever registered must be affiliated to some institution. If it's an NGO, it must be an NGO which is registered by the NGO board in Kenya, and the NGO council, so that somebody is from a legal institution. Once the technical people have gone through that, there's the back end where there's security clearance. You know, Trevor, I don't know what we do once we leave this stage, but the security team would be able to find out if there are things which can make you unacceptable for clearance, to be cleared for the conference. And then finally, as Kenya, we do have a problem because we are hosting a global conference. About 7,000 delegates are expected in Nairobi. We cannot make it a Kenyan conference. Actually, what has been agreed on is 20% of the delegates will be Kenyans. So that makes it just 1,000, 1,200 Kenyans who are going to be cleared to attend the conference. So you find that the numbers also, we say, like, if it's one organization, don't bring the whole of your organization, bring 2-3 people. So that's what the balancing act which is going on now.
All right, I'll come to Dr. Ngare in just a bit, and also Dr. Gitau, but for now, let's take a very quick break here on the Town Hall session. When we come back, I'll read some of your views as well. Use the hashtag Monday Report at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. We'll sample some of your views, and then I'll open the floor for questions as well. See you in just a bit.